All right there, YouTube. I finally got around to doing some of the electrical upgrades that I wanted to make on this Sun-Lite 16BH camper. I installed an inverter, two 6-volt batteries, an outlet, and a few miscellaneous bits and bobs here and there. So let me just give you an overview of what I got going on here, and I guess tell you why I decided to do all this. Let me tell you that in the first place. So what you're looking at here is an upside down. It's upside down because that's the best way to mount it given the wiring configuration, but that's a 1,000-watt inverter by Renogy. And the reason I wanted an inverter is, well, for luxury reasons. I want to be able to watch my TV when I'm boondocking, when I don't have anywhere to plug in. And I have like a little Blue Eddy power bank that I run the TV off of, but it only gives me about 2.5 or 3 hours of runtime, and that's pretty much it. Then I got to charge that up with the solar panel or plug it into my car as I'm driving, and it's a bit of a nuisance. Beyond the luxury reasons, I also wanted to be able to run my heat tape when I'm boondocking in sub-freezing temperatures. I've got heat tape that wraps around my sewage connections, around the water pump, and around the water tank on the far side of the trailer over there. I'll show you that in a minute. The way it is currently, I have to be plugged in to be camping somewhere super cold because I don't want that stuff to freeze. I don't winterize. I winter camp more than anything else. But this way I've got enough battery power, and I've got an inverter that will run those two lengths of heat tape and not even have to bat an eye about it. So that's the other reason I wanted to do all this. So this Renogy inverter, the way I installed it, what you're looking at here is the front pass-through storage of the 16BH. So there's the front of the trailer, and I decided to put it in here. Well, hey, hang on a second. You're probably wondering, you got two 6-volt batteries, why didn't you just do lithium ion? If you're going to be putting the inverter inside, you could have put those lithium batteries in here as well. And I guess I could have, but they would take up a whole lot of space. I'd have to make sure that I keep this cabin warm enough for them as well. And if not, I would have to put the batteries inside the camper through that wall right there. And I don't want to do that either because that would just require making a bunch of space. And the other thing too is those batteries are pretty darn heavy, and that would add excessive weight to this side of the trailer. And if you know anything about the 16BH, the passenger side is the heavier side. You got your fridge, you got your under dinette storage, you got your over dinette storage over here, you got your furnace. Everything adds up, and this is the side. If you have flattened springs on your 16BH, they're going to flatten on the passenger side before they flatten on the driver's side. So I didn't want to put that extra weight of 2 lithium-ion batteries, or however many lithium-ion batteries, all on one side of the trailer. That's one of the reasons. But anyways, what I did is I mounted this piece of wood here, it's just a piece of plywood, to this curved part to give me a nice flat surface to mount. And then I've got the inverter is just screwed into that. That way I don't have to potentially mess with screwing into the frame of the trailer or anything like that. This is good and sturdy. And then it gave me a place to wrap my wires around. This is just a big long extension cord. And then over here, you got a remote. I'm going to show you where this remote connects. It connects up front by the bed. And then let me just squeeze myself on in here. Boy, this is dark. You're not going to be able to see this too well. But then you got your wired connections here that come around. And I wanted to make sure I had a fuse on the inverter as well. So I got a fuse here. And then that white wire is the ground wire. And then this stuff goes outside, and that's what connects to the battery. And then that long extension cord just goes around here. I've got it just draped around there. Then you could see it running along the top frame. This is all underneath the bed. That goes way over there to a surge protector. So before we look at anything else, let me scoot over to that other side and I'll show you how all that connects. All right, so that wire just comes along here, makes its way on over, and then this is the surge protector. So I've got 3 outlets on the surge protector. This orange one is for the heat tape that goes to the water pump and around the tank here a little bit. This black one here, this goes around and it comes up, and this takes us to an outlet inside. I'll show you that in a minute. And then that remote wire I told you comes around here, and this goes up to the inside as well, right next to the outlet. I'll show you that in a minute. But anyways, then I got a third outlet. So the other heat tape, well, the first heat tape is here. It's underneath this insulation. This is my main water line that comes inside the trailer. And then it's wrapped around the water pump and all the associated water lines. Goes around back a little bit. And then I just had some excessive length of it, so I just kind of looped it around the front of the tank. I may one day decide to put a flat water tank heater along the side there. They're almost like those things that you put on the bottom of a reptile terrarium. I might decide to put one of those in here, but I don't really think I necessarily need it. It's not like this is going to keep the tank from freezing or anything like that, but typically, if I am camping somewhere in freezing temperatures, and if I was worried about this whole pass-through storage getting, you know, below 32 degrees, there's a door right over there that goes into the living space of the trailer. I usually just open that up, and the furnace just brings enough warm air through here that fills this whole entire thing pretty darn well. I wish that this floor was heated. It's one of my regrets about this trailer. I mean, it's not a regret, but one of the things I don't like that I didn't even consider until having it for a couple of years is there's no insulation on this floor. I said heated. I don't mean that the floor needs to be heated. I just wish it was insulated. It's just a piece of 3/4 inch plywood underneath this. And it'd be nice if there was some insulation, but that's neither here nor there. At any rate, that's where that heat tape goes around there. So that's the first strand of heat tape that connects to here. And then there's a third outlet. Now the other heat tape, coming outside now, is wrapped around my sewage connections here. I don't have under tank heaters on this trailer, but at least wanted to have some heat tape here so that these valves don't freeze up, and that the main outlet, especially the gray water. I'm not so worried about the black tank, but my gray tank is one that I don't want to freeze. The black tank, I very rarely ever fill up the black tank in the first place. I could be out for days and days and days and not fill up the black tank. But the gray tank will. So this way, that keeps this from freezing, and it keeps this valve opening so I can open when I need to. But anyways, all of that is just dangling right down here. So I got to plug an extension cord in for that. And that extension cord would just connect here, and it would literally run underneath the trailer, underneath the trailer, underneath the trailer, and then it would come in right here. Well, what the heck's that all about, you're wondering? Well, look up here. So I got a plug. It's literally just a stopper right here. So this thing pulls out, and that's where I could feed the extension cord, the other end up. Other end goes up, and then it would connect to the surge protector up there. And this plug is just here so that critters don't make their way in, and I guess even cold air doesn't make its way in. Maybe a little bit of moisture could splash up there or something like that. That's what that plug is for. So with that inverter, which is way over there, I can run my TV for as long as I want, really. And I can run both heat tapes, again, pretty much as long as I want. And I've got an outlet inside if I want to run something else from it. All that works out really, really great. I got to show you the batteries. But before I show you the batteries, let me just show you the inside real quick. So you may be asking yourself, why didn't I run the inverter into the main power of the trailer so that all of the outlets are inverter outlets? Like, for example, this one above the sink. Normally there's a green light showing that it's getting power. I'm unplugged right now. There's no green light. This is a dead outlet. It's not run on the inverter. I didn't want to potentially screw up and have something plugged in to one of the outlets, like for example, the one underneath the dinette here, and just have it kill my battery without paying attention to it. I'm prone to make mistakes. So I figured it would be safest to have a dedicated outlet, just one outlet that would be running off of the battery itself. The batteries, I got 2 batteries now. And I decided to put it over here because this is where my television is. So my TV is up here. And this way the TV just has a plug that comes down, and I can be completely sure that if there's nothing plugged in down here, then I'm not going to be draining my battery from the inverter in particular. So I also like it like this because this slides open and there's a USB on there as well. But this way I can kind of just keep junk from getting inside it, dog hairs or whatever. And then the TV just plugs in here. And if you turn the TV on, you can see what I'm talking about. And it's going to try to connect to my Wi-Fi at first. And it probably is going to fail to do that right now. But that doesn't matter. Whenever I'm out boondocking and stuff like that, I'm basically watching stuff off of USB anyways. Basically, that's how it works. But yeah, I'm on battery power, and the TV is working. So that's all you need to see there, I suppose. But anyways, it plugs in down here. And then I also like this because I've got a on-off switch for the inverter itself. Remember that remote wire I told you about earlier? It comes up to here. So if I want to just be absolutely safe and just completely power off the inverter, I could press this button here. Now the inverter is completely turned off. And as you could tell, the TV is turned off as well. And then if I want to turn it back on, I just press it again. And I also like it because it has a status light. So if there was ever any sort of, I don't know, short circuit or problem or something, it would give me a status indicator right next to that green light. So that's how all this works inside here. If I want to plug something else in there, I can, but at least I can run the TV when I'm out in the middle of nowhere. Now, let's show you the batteries. So to get two 6-volt batteries in here, I had to swap out the standard single battery tray, or box, I guess, that came with this thing, with a double battery tray. Here's the problem, is that to take that lid off of that tray, it fits in there. I mean, it is really tight. You can see there's like 1/8 of an inch of that gap right there. To get that lid off, I can't take that lid off when I have the cover on top of these propane tanks. I got to take the propane tank cover off to allow me access to remove this cover, which is really, really, really inconvenient. But there's just no way around it. It's such a tight fit in there with a cover on this propane tanks. Thankfully, I don't need to take that lid off very often, so I guess it's not that big of a deal. So for batteries, I went with the Trojan T125 6-volt battery. It's a 240 amp hour battery, and I've got both of them wired up together here. I guess this would be in parallel, or is it called in series? I forget the terminology for that, but I've got them wired up so that both 6-volt batteries are functioning as one 12-volt battery. The reason I decided to do that rather than just putting one bigger 12-volt battery in here is I do think that I'll get a little bit longer runtime this way from two 6-volts versus one 12-volt. Plus, it's just easier to maneuver. Each of these things weighs 65 pounds. So getting them in this spot, you know, dropping a 65-pound battery in here is not that big of a deal. Dropping a 130-pound battery, like if this was all just one big chunk of battery, would be a nightmare. I don't think I could even do it. I'd probably have a heck of a time. So that's what this wire here is. So to run them together, you just connect the positive from one to the negative on the other. And then your positive from the corner of one, and then your negative from the corner of the other. That's what makes it a 12-volt system. This thing here is a battery monitor. So this is by Victron. It's a smart shunt. I'm kind of having trouble getting the right angle here to show you what it looks like. But what this does, this tells me on my phone via Bluetooth how much battery I've used and how much battery I'm consuming. Let me show you what that looks like. I'm trying to find the best angle to display this for you. But you can see I'm at 100% right now. You can see the current is negative 3.27 amps. I'm currently drawing 42 watts. And that's basically just the lights that are on inside. So I got all my lights turned on, it's drawing about 42 watts. If I were to keep everything as it is, I could essentially run the lights like that for 2 days and 2 hours. If you look on the bottom, the time remaining. And that's what I like about that. So when I have, you know, all of my heat tape going at once and the TV's on or whatever, I could always see if I'm not recharging in any way whatsoever, how long all that would last continuously. And obviously you're not going to do something continuously, but it gives you kind of a pretty good indicator. So with all the lights on in the trailer, it basically draws 42 watts of power. All right, so I got the TV on. That's Mythbusters. I've got all those on USB drive. But you can see now I'm drawing 53 watts. So with all the lights on and with the TV on, it's only 53 watts. Now let's go ahead and do another test here. I'm just going to set this down. Let me go ahead and turn on the water pump. So you can see it jumped up to 125 watts. So basically, what is that? Like 75 watts of power, 75 watts of power to run the water pump. Turn the water pump off, goes back down to around 53. So if I wanted to have all my lights on, watch Mythbusters, and take the longest shower forever, if you look on the bottom, the time remaining is 1 day and 1 hour. So I could basically for 24 hours run the water pump continuously, which is pretty cool. And I'm still at 100%. Something else to keep in mind is it's calibrated so that 100% is really 50% of your battery. So you set the 0% range. The 0% range in this case is 50% of my battery power. And that's because obviously if you go below 50%, then you start to cause damage to the batteries. So if I wanted to go below 50%, I certainly could. And that would cause harm and get more of a shower and more Mythbusters, I suppose. Look at that boy out there, just laying in the gravel like some kind of weirdo. What a funny dog. So anyways, that's how that smart shunt works. And I've just got that sitting literally on top of the battery with some double-sided tape. And it basically wires from the negative terminal of the battery on one end, and then on the other end of the shunt is all of your negative connections. In my case, I've got that black wire which goes to the inverter, and then that white wire is a ground wire. And then that black wire that's connecting the two is just to put them in series or in parallel, whatever you say, to make it 12 volt. And then over here in the positive connection, the black wire is the positive wire that goes to all the stuff inside the trailer. The red wire is the one that goes to the inverter. And then that skinny little red wire is basically what powers the shunt. It just plugs into the front of it. You can see that skinny red wire coming up there. That's essentially it. Like I said, the only downside of this arrangement is it is really difficult to get that lid back on top of this with the cover on the propane tanks. And the only place that's going to pose a problem for me is when I've got my solar panels connected, because unfortunately I bought this trailer before they started putting in like a connection. I think they're usually like right over here somewhere, or maybe they put them over here, where you could just plug your panels right into that, and then that connection is wired to the battery to charge up the battery. I don't have that, and I don't want to go drilling into the side of this thing now to put that in. So when I connect my solar panels, they basically just have alligator clips that goes on each terminal, and then you just run the wire down. So that means you'd have to take this whole lid off to connect the solar panels, which means I got to take this lid off. That's a real headache for me. So what I'm going to get is just a ring terminal connection similar to these for the negative, and then one for the positive that just goes down here and basically just hangs with a cap on it. Then I could just put the lid on and have those dangling down, ready to connect my solar panels right to those. It's I got to buy a whole new wires for the solar panels and everything, because they're the folding kind that'll set right about here. All of that's a big whole nother thing to think about for another day. But for now anyways, everything is working. And if I need to connect my solar panels, which I won't have to this summer, I just take that lid off. I'll get all that figured out before my next solar panel necessity comes aboard. Don't worry. I mean, I tell you not to worry, like as if you're worried. As if you're even concerned. But I will get all that straightened out. I'll just have connections there that drape down underneath the lid, so that lid stays on all the time. The only time I'd ever have to take that lid off is if I needed to do some maintenance to these batteries. Fill them with distilled water or something like that, which is, how often is that? Very, very rarely does that ever happen. So, at any rate, that's what we got going on with this whole new setup here. What did all this cost? So, the batteries I bought somewhere local. I bought them from a place here in Tennessee that sells this sort of stuff for golf carts primarily and things like that. So the batteries I bought local. I'll give you a link to the Trojan site so you could see all the specs on them. The batteries came out to like around $600 or so combined with tax and everything like that. It's about $600. If you were to buy these batteries on Amazon, they're close to $900 on Amazon. I don't know why, but maybe because they're got to ship them and the shipping's included. I don't know, but 600 bucks for the batteries from a local person here, a local shop here. This shunt was just over 100 bucks. The inverter was like 150 bucks. So that plus all the wiring, had to buy a bunch of cables and stuff like that, this, that, and the other. The outlet that goes inside, the surge protector, it's probably somewhere close to $1,000 total for everything added up together. Not that you'd have to do all that if you wanted to do something similar to this. If you just wanted batteries and an inverter, you'd probably be looking at like 800 bucks or something like that. That's it. I appreciate you watching this video. Hopefully this gives you an idea of you know, just some alternative if you want to boondock a little bit more. And if you've got one of the older Sun-Lites like I do that don't have the solar panels on the roof or any of that stuff, this is kind of a way to sort of make that happen. Oh, I forgot to tell you something else. This is important. I was about ready to stop talking. You got to look down here. This was the first thing I did. I did this a while back and I didn't even tell you about it. So there's a weld right here. I don't know if you could see, it's kind of dark. And then there's another weld down there. Then on the corners of the other side over there, there's 2 more welds. Whenever they did this at the factory, they didn't miter this angle iron. And it was literally just kind of like spot welded, I think is what you call it, just on a little edge up here and just on a little edge down there. So I went to a local welder and they put a piece of metal. Let me show you from underneath. You might be able to see a little bit better. So you can kind of see, they put like an extension almost here, and they welded that piece of metal to the underside of the frame on both ends, like that. And then the same thing on the 2 corners on the other side way over there. So this way it's welded from the bottom, as well as that little spot weld that would be kind of up there. So there's extra points of welding to hold all this, because like I said, each of these batteries is 65 pounds. So that's 130 pounds that's there. The battery that was in here before, I think weighed like 40 some pounds. So it's, you know, what is it, like at least 80 pounds more of weight on this thing than it was designed to hold. And I was afraid with those little teeny spot welds that going down some bumpy roads and stuff like that, this whole thing could just collapse and fall out. It ain't going anywhere now, that's for sure. So if you were to do this sort of setup on your own, and if you got one of the older Sun-Lites like I do, then you might just want to just double check and see how it's welded here to make sure they did it securely. I think that they just do that as quickly and as cheaply as possible in general. It wouldn't surprise me if the new ones aren't welded any better than mine was. So anyways, all right, now I'm officially done. Thanks for watching this video. If you have any questions about this, you're going to ask me for links for all this stuff. Everybody always wants links for this, that, and the other. I'll put all the links to the things that I purchased in the description of this video, so you can check that out if you want to order any of this yourself. And like I said, if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching. Take care.